Okay, we'll just get started. Ganael will be recording this so that we can have the meeting available to everyone on our help desk. So I wanted to just introduce myself. My name is Cindy Kaswich. I'm the HMIS director from Pinellas County. Ganael.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ganael, and I am the training and support coordinator for HMIS.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brian Leapley. I'm the Pinellas HMIS System Administrator.
And then why don't we go around and everybody introduce themselves. Dominique, let's start with you and then Avery.
Good afternoon. This is Dominique Randall. I work at the HLA and I'm the Homeless Crisis Response Supervisor.
Hi, everyone. It's Avery Sliker. I'm the Performance Equipment Manager with the Homeless Leadership Alliance.
Okay, Carol Bolden.
Good afternoon. I'm Carol Bolden with Pinellas Opportunity Council.
Dee Manji.
Hi, I'm Dee Manje with Brookwood, Florida.
Holly. We'll get back to Holly. Janice.
I'm Janice King at Directions for Living.
Joan.
Hi, I'm John Andrade with PAMS.
Kimberly DeLuigi.
Hi, I'm Kimberly DeLuigi. I'm from Grace House, and that's Hope Villages of America.
Larry Allen. Lou Richardson.
Good afternoon, everybody. Lou Richardson with Department of Veteran Affairs.
Mark Dufa.
Hope Villages of America. Mark.
Hey, Mark. Matthew. Mackenzie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mackenzie Brissett from Alpha House of Pinellas, and I am the Director of Residential Programs.
All right, looking through Leslie.
Hi, this is Nicole Leslie with Family Resources.
Hi, Nicole. Ramona.
Hi.
Good afternoon, Ramona Schaefer, Program Services Supervisor with the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office.
All right, next we have Ryan.
Hey everybody, Ryan Shea. I am the HMIS Data Analyst for Directions for Living.
Ricky.
I'm Ricky Sinker at Catholic Charities.
All right, next we have Tracy.
Hi, I'm Tracy Stickney with the Salvation Army of Clearwater and Upper Pinellas.
Valentina.
She can't hear.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you for that, Dominique. Lieutenant Haish.
Zach Haish, Pinellas County Sheriff's Office.
And have we missed anyone? I think Clarissa, you came in. Hello?
I think I saw her unmute herself. Maybe she's having some audio issues.
Hey, this is Alicia Pirelli from Ready for Life. I was having some problems with my microphone.
No worries.
Right.
Holly? I think Holly might be having problems too. Okay, well, we're going to get started, everyone. We know that your time is very valuable. Oh, we hear somebody else.
see Brandon.
Hi, Brandon.
Holly said that she unmuted, but we still couldn't hear her, but she is here.
Okay. I'm going to be minding the chat room for everybody. So if you have any questions, please feel free to just write them out as the presenters are going over their slides. And I will make sure that you get a response to your question. And if we can't respond today, we will definitely get back to you. But we are going to be recording this, so be aware that this meeting is being recorded. So I'm going to hand this over to who's minding the slides. Ganel?
Yep, that would be me.
Perfect.
Perfect. All righty. Let's go ahead and get started. I will keep everyone muted for most of the duration of this meeting, just so we can minimize background noise. Now, this is our agenda items. All of our meeting materials have been posted on our help desk. So for future reference, you can come back in here. And if you're looking for a particular topic, you can click these links and it will take you directly to that slide. Our first topic are policy and procedure changes. The most current policy and procedures can be found on our help desk. The updated one was sent to all agency admins recently. If you have not received it, please let me know. A few key changes that I want to make note of. License fees have been changed and they have increased from $514 to $539. We've added some clarification on responsibilities of HMIS staff as well as member agency administrators regarding data quality issues, timeliness expectations, and corrective action on compliance. But there is also a corrective action plan laid out in a very step-by-step manner for the different types of risk. Moving on to the next slide, we also updated the report training policies to bring them in line with the current reporting tools. There are 2 levels of report trainings available. The basic report training, which is what covers the certifications for the data quality submissions, the APR, CAPR, and other CAN reports, and the advanced report training, which covers available reporting tools in HMIS for ART and CLIC. Keep in mind that CLIC is not currently available for all HMIS users. And we've also added a new form called the Pinellas HMIS project request form. All right, some of the updates with our forms. There is now an additional question on the certification form for shelters and housing providers. The most current version of this form can be found on our help desk, and it should be used for submission starting April 7th. The next section is the new project setup form, and I will hand this over to
So we have a new project form that I will show you here in a second, but it really ties into the issue of new projects and new funding. And so the one thing that is always a challenge for HMIS and for agencies is making sure that we have projects in HMIS to meet your needs as far as grants and funding goes. And so the earlier you can get us this information, the better. It allows us to get staff trained before the grant starts and make sure that we have everything lined up and ready for you to go. So if you are going to be receiving new funding, please try to let us know as soon as you can. This can really come into play, especially with a lot of the new ESGCV funding that is out in the community. We know that there are new rounds of that funding being made available for application. So there has been a large injection of new funding recently. And this has always at times been a challenge because we need to know certain information. You obviously need certain things set up for you to use, but some of that information is then also held by, maybe it's the grant recipient themselves or like your contract manager, grant writer. So there are a lot of moving parts that have to kind of fall into place for this to really be an easy process. And so this new project form is going to be designed to really capture that information up front. That way, when you are saying we need a new project in HMIS, this is the information that we need from you to build that project, to make sure it's set up properly, to allow us to develop a workflow or, figure out what the workflow is based on the federal partner that gave you the money. And then also allow for, your end users to be trained, reporting to be trained to you depending on what you need to fulfill for it. So this is really designed to help us collect that information up front and make the process as seamless and painless as possible. So if you are getting new funding that requires HMIS data entry, or that you would like to collect an HMIS for reporting purposes, then you'd want to fill this out for each project that you need built in HMIS. And in some instances, you may not be sure, is this one project, is this two? This doesn't eliminate asking us questions about that. This is, once we determine kind of what you need, you would complete this for each project. So if you have something that ends up being two projects, we would need 2 copies of the form. Otherwise, we could just use one. It just depends on what that funding and need looks like. So Ganael, if you want to stop sharing for a minute, I will share the form. Okay. Okay, so this is what the form looks like, and I'm just going to go through it kind of quickly. It will be available for you to use. If you have any questions while filling out the form, you can reach out to us through the help desk. But this basically walks through the process for adding a new project in HMIS. And so when you look at it, it has the timeline outlined. So if you are an existing HMIS member agency, which I believe everyone on this call is, we do have some new agencies potentially coming on board. You just want to look at this first timeline. And basically what we're asking for is that once you submit this form, we'll take 2 business days to review it to make sure we have the information we need. And then we'll get back to you within 5 days after that to either have the project built or discuss any questions. So we're really looking at about a 2-week period just to allow us to have time to make sure that we have all of the information we need to set the project up, to make sure that the project aligns with our HMIS policies and procedures. It's not generally an issue, but there are certain data elements like mental health or other health diagnoses that we don't really want to have in HMIS since it's a shared system. So we are going to look at things like that. And that's part of this kind of approval process for it. But like if you're getting grant funded that requires HMIS data entry, obviously that's going to shorten the process, especially if it is something like ESG funding where there's already an established workflow and everything for it. So this basically gives us time to develop it and talk to you about any questions that we may have and get any clarification that we need. Again, if you're a new member agency, the only addition to the process is you need to be on board, participant agreement signed, things like that before we get to this process. So you can kind of look past that section. Basically for this form, we just need some pretty simple information from you for the most part. A couple sections may be a little trickier, but it's going to look for the agency information, your agency name. The project name is what you're calling it. So if you have a specific name for this grant, that works for the project name. If you have something that you're calling it internally, that also works. We just want to make sure that it doesn't overlap with another project in HMIS under your agency, so we can make sure data is kept separate. The information for the project's location, if it's something like rapid rehousing that works out of an office, it would be the office location. If we're looking at a shelter housing provider, it would be that shelter location or that housing location. We ask for a short description of the project. This could be anything from, it's an emergency shelter. That's pretty self-explanatory, to it's a service-only project that provides basic needs to clients that need assistance. However detailed you want to be is fine. We ask for service information later, so you don't need to give us the full rundown of the project here. Project start date is important. It gives us an idea of when this project is getting off the ground, so we can make sure that as best as we can have everything lined up and ready to go when the project starts. Project end date, if you know it. So if this is a 1-year grant, then you can tell us that, it's a 1-year grant. This is when it ends. Obviously, it can get extended, so we can change that. But we are tracking end dates for projects in HMIS. That way we know kind of when a project stops. And this is a part of the HUD data element. So it helps us with that. But if the project is indefinite and closes later, we can always update it at that point too. So project end date isn't as significant. Then we get to what I will just say are they're not exhaustive. These are the data elements we need for HMIS compliance with the HUD standard. So you'll see things and you'll be like, why isn't this included? And that's a question we've already been given about this form, but it's because these are the fields and the questions HUD is specifically asking us for the projects. So the first one is project type. Most of these are going to probably be determined by the grant or the funding that you're receiving. So if you're receiving ESG for rapid rehousing, you're going to select rapid rehousing. If you're getting a PSH grant, you're going to select the permanent supportive housing. If you're getting prevention, it's prevention. You can only select one. If you have 2 project types, then it's going to probably have to be broken out into 2 separate projects, depending on what the grant says and what those actually mean. We have prevention projects that also provide financial assistance that may be wrapped into one. It just kind of depends. This is where we may have to have a conversation about what the project is actually doing. But we need one of these picked. And the nice thing about this is that you can only select one. So you aren't able to select multiple at the same time. Then we have target populations. So these are 2 that are set by HUD. So we know there are a dozen other populations or all these other questions. That really has nothing to do with these. Basically, the target population is if 75% or more of your population falls into one of these groups, then it is a target population. So the first one is domestic violence victims or survivors. If you are a DV funded project, then you're not going to be entering into HMIS. So that's kind of a stop at that point. You can serve domestic violence victims and survivors if that's not your target. But if you're getting funded through the Violence Against Women Act or something like that, then you're not going to be able to enter into HMIS. The next one is, does the project serve persons with HIV/AIDS as a target population? This is really around like the HOPWA funded projects. So if it's yes, it probably means you're HOPWA funded. So again, answer is yes or no. Then we're going to look at funding streams. And so this is really about federal funding streams, but even local help us. We may be aware of what that local grant means, and so it may give us a little more information. So we just want to know who the funder is, the grant start and end date. And this is something that, depending on your agency, you may have to contact your grant writer for that information. We know this has always been kind of a challenge in the past when we're talking with agency admins because you're not always a part of that process. So as best you can identify it, that helps. If it is a local funding source, like let's say you're getting something from Pinellas County or from the city of St. Pete, we have an option here. Just kind of let us know. So social action funding from the city of St. Pete or Pinellas County is a great example. It's not a federal funding stream. It's through those local funders. So just let us know social action funding. That does help us. And then we look at the federal funding options. It is a lengthy list. There's unfortunately not much we can do about it. And it is getting a little longer, unfortunately. But this is where if you're COC funded, you go through the NOFA process and you get permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, safe haven, something like that. You want to find the option that matches. If you're ESG funded, again, we have various ESG funding options. If you're getting HOPWA, if you're getting VASH or RY or VA funding for GPD or something like that, you want to find the option that fits with your funding stream and select it. The reason this is important is, one, this is reported to HUD for the HIC and other reports, and two, if you pick a funding option here, 99% of the time there's already an established workflow, project setup process, and everything for us, and it will make everyone's life a lot easier. So we do need to know this information if you are receiving that. This hopefully is something that is shared with you when you are informed that you need to add a new project. And generally, whenever there is a federal funding stream like this, it's in most instances going to necessitate a new project from what you already have, unless it's just a renewal. So then we get into some of the easier sections. This is looking at ways that we can set everything up to make it easier for you. So services, what services are you offering? So the list here is not exhaustive. It's basically the 20 most common services that were provided by HMIS member agencies over the last year and a half or so. So if you don't see something here, select as many as you need: rent payment assistance, clothing, public showers. And if there are other things you need, you can type them down here in the box. So you can type as many things as you need. And it doesn't mean we'll be able to find a single service for each item, but it helps us build that service quick list for you. And we may come back to you with some questions about it and ways to track this information. But any services that you're offering, we can build. And the service quick list can always be updated after the fact. So this doesn't have to be completed in its entirety to cover every single option before the program starts. We can always add to it. And your end users can always look up new services too. If there's that one-time thing that you have never provided before, you probably never will again. But this time you're doing it as an exception. So there's still that option. But this will help with that service quick list to make your lives easier. Then we have data elements. And so really, we start with just a list of the basic HUD standards. And so, these are most of the questions that, if you're federally funded, you're going to be answering. A lot of the questions that local funded projects are already answering. So it kind of covers what's in there already. But then we have a section where you can add to it. So let's say you're getting funded for something and your funder wants to know about the education status of the clients that are being served. And so if that's the case, you can definitely let us know, because there are some questions that exist in HMIS, or we can build a custom question for you. And so here we're just asking for you to attach like a Word doc with the question and the answer categories that you're supposed to collect for that funder. That way we know it's not just education, but it's education. It's 0 through 12, and then some college, finished college, whatever it might be. So as much detail as you can provide on this. This may be a section where we have to go back and forth with some questions to make sure we get everything lined up correctly. But if you do need to collect additional data elements, try to upload a document here with what those are. So again, we can start to build that into the project and into the workflow, and Ganael does the training for your end users. And then lastly, this is a reporting section. It's basically asking if you are doing monthly, quarterly, or annual reports. Again, you can select all of them. So, and that's not something that really impacts us as much as it helps us know when you're going to be looking at getting data from this project. And then if you need assistance from us for reporting, so if you're looking at, the reports that are available, like client served or the APR or the CAPR or something like that, and it doesn't give you what you need, if you need additional information on reporting, let us know what those metrics are. We may have a report that already does that for you, and we can, make a copy available for you, or it may be something where we have to look at, what reports are there. Is this something that has to be built custom? So it helps us know that information, especially if you have that as the project is starting. We can make sure that's set up. We can make sure, you have that ready to go, and then we're not trying to scramble at, the deadline to get a custom report for you, and you're not trying to scramble to pull all this information together. So once you're done with that and you click submit, it will let us know that the form was filled out, and then that will start the process where we can go through, review the form, make sure we have all of the information we need, and again, come back to you with any questions that we might have. Again, if you have any questions during it, if you aren't quite sure about something, you can always send us a help desk ticket. And we can help with answering some of those questions based on what you tell us. But the idea behind this is if you know everything you need for this project, you fill this out, it'll make everyone's life a lot easier, and it'll get this whole process started a lot quicker. So I will stop sharing. Ganael, you can pull the slides back up.
Great, thank you, Brian. Let me share. All right, our next agenda item is system performance, and this is where I will hand it over to you, Avery. If you need me to go to the next slide, you can just let me know and I will do the clicks.
Thank you, Ganael, for clicking for me. Okay, everybody, it's that time of year where we're looking at system performance. Our system performance measures were submitted by Brian and the HMIS team earlier this year. I know that oftentimes a lot of agencies will say, we're not HUD funded, so what do these matter? Well, the fact is that you just saw from Brian's list that there's an awful lot of programs out there that are technically funded through HUD. You just may be calling it something different, ESG, HOPWA. Those are HUD-funded projects, and so therefore it's important. Also, we are a continuum of care. That means everything that we do, everything that goes into HMIS is reported to HUD. HUD looks at us as the system because that's who we are. So your data does matter. This year, HUD made the decision because of COVID-19 that the system performance measures were not going to be counted against continuums of care when it comes to the 2021 NOFA, which is a good thing, and you're about to see why. Go ahead, Danielle. Here's where you're going to see the largest impact that COVID-19 had on our continuum of care, and that is within the length of time persons remained homeless. We saw less individuals moving out of emergency shelter, safe haven, and transitional housing because we were quarantined, so people were staying in place. You'll also see that we significantly decreased the number of individuals being served in those projects. A question that we continuously ask ourselves is, where did they go? Where have they been staying? And are they going to be coming back? Something that's very vital is that we all talk about the tsunami that will be coming from evictions. But my concern is the first wave. And that first wave could be these individuals that have left shelter because they didn't feel comfortable due to the quarantine, to additional rules and regulations, and them coming back into our system of care and us being able to handle that. So this first system performance measure really shows that. On top is just the average and median length of time people are homeless. When you look at the bottom, that is still measure 1 with length of time, but this time includes prior to the move-in date. And as you see, our average length of stays increased an awful lot. Go ahead, Ganaya. What's great and what speaks to our improved data quality and the great data work that we've been doing, as well as showing our system is making some very good progress, is our returns to homelessness. This is the second year in a row that our total returns to homeless has been under 30%. And so that is a congratulations to all of you in regards to your great data quality, and also congratulations to our whole system of care, that we are reducing the number of individuals that exit to permanent destinations coming back into the system within 2 years. Go ahead, Ganaya. Our change in our annual counts. Here again is where you see the dramatic impact of COVID-19 on our continuum of care. Last year, when we submitted our system performance measures, we had over 8,000 individuals within our system. This year, we had 6,269 total unsheltered. As an FYI for all of you, if you didn't know by now, because we're in March, we did not participate in the point in time count this year. It was deemed not to be safe for our continuum of care at that time. So HUD did allow for us to put in and be excused from that. And we will be submitting data though, just so you know. Brian is working on some very specific data using the shelter data and some street outreach data, and we will be submitting some information, but it just won't be by the visual count that we've done in years past and by doing our interviews. Next slide. Employment and income growth. Now, this is the one and only system performance measure that pulls from the continuum of care funded projects. Those are the projects that are funded through that annual NOFA. So this is the only data that pulls specifically from them. However, in knowing that, we do have continuum of care benchmarks for every project type. And income growth is measured within those. So while you may say, I'm not a COC funded project, employment and income growth doesn't matter to me, it does. Because our continuum of care is taking a look at all of that. This is going to be a major push for this year, is collaborating with workforce development and ensuring that our participants are able to have sustainable employment, because without that, they can't sustain housing. So of concern this year was unearned income for stayers. This we did decrease. This one kind of I struggle with a lot, and I know that HMIS team does too, because you see that we increased our earned income for those that are staying, and that's really great and good. But when that happens, we will sometimes see a decrease in the unearned income because our participants lose their benefits due to the employment. So this one I'm kind of mixed about when I say that we increased it, because we did increase that earned income. And overall for stayers, we increased by 1%. Next. For our leavers, what we see, these are the individuals that left the system. And we see that there was a decrease of 2% for those that with earned income. Now, I speak on this one. This can sometimes be a simple data quality issue. There may be times when you just don't enter in the annual assessment. And this past year was most definitely one of those years because you weren't seeing your clients right away. You know, we had a hold on that. So I want to encourage you to get your annual assessments in, especially if you're doing virtual case management. So that's very important to note that you need to do those increases. For unearned for leavers and total income, we had increases there. Very nice increases for the unearned income. So congratulations on all of that. And I do want to say in regards to data quality here for those that are the COC funded projects, I monitor this every quarter and I watch it very carefully within your APRs. And I do have to give you a big congratulations. The number of annual assessments that have been missing have decreased dramatically from when HLA began taking on HMIS and even just in this past year. So even with COVID, you did a tremendous job with data quality and I congratulate you. Okay, next. So successful placement. First of all, what we look at is persons who exit street outreach. They can exit to temporary or institutional destinations, exit to permanent housing, and then the total. This is a decrease. However, I want to stress why this is a decrease and why we suspect this is a decrease. There have been significant changes over the past year to street outreach. We lost a provider for a while. We went without street outreach due to that, and then the county changed how street outreach was functioning. We now have a brand new provider for countywide. They changed things up and we're seeing that impact here. People are staying in street outreach longer now. Before, we tried to get people in and out in 30 days, and The model's been changed to provide more intensive case management on the street. So there is a longer number of stay here. And we believe that that is one of the primary reasons why we see this decrease. You also had the impact of COVID too for this, where people were approached on the street and they did not want to come into shelter during that time. You will see that for exits to permanent housing, for emergency shelter, safe haven, transitional housing, and rapid rehousing, that's an increase. And for those, the change in the retention of permanent housing was also an increase. I believe that might be it for me.
Yes, it is, Avery. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I have one brief announcement. I'm sorry. I know it wasn't on the agenda. I'm sorry. We will be in the process of monitoring the Pinellas HMIS very soon. And with that, it's going to be coming out an end user and a agency administration survey. I know there's lots of groans because you hate taking surveys. However, this is very vital. We are now moving into the phase of being able to enhance HMIS. We are done with that whole transition. We are on top of data quality, and now it's time for us to see how can we grow HMIS to be better for you and better for our participants. That will bring in additional dollars. So on March 29th, you will be receiving an email. There'll be other means of getting it. I want you to strongly encourage you to take it as soon as possible. And please promote with your end users and make sure that they are taking it and finishing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Avery. I just wanted to state that this is a monitoring that is going to be done for HMIS in particular. This is an annual event that is going to be done through Data and System Performance, and Avery is the staff member assigned to Data and System Performance. So this is just one part of their monitoring for HMIS. So we really welcome any feedback that we can do to improve our system in general. And we look forward to hearing the results of the monitoring.
All right, thank you. The next topic on our agenda list is coordinated entry, and I will hand that over to Dominique.
Everyone, Dominique Randall here again. For those who may not know me, I work at the Homeless Leadership Alliance, and I'm the Homeless Crisis Response Supervisor. But really, for the sake of this meeting, we're going to be looking at some of the coordinated entry changes, some new policies, some new programs related to coordinated entry. But before we get into those, I really wanted to spend some time on what HMIS data is relevant, what information is important for the purpose of coordinated entry and for the purpose of continuity of care and services. So I hope you guys will take some notes and bring this back to some of your direct frontline staff to show them where some of these tips and tricks are, but also the importance of it for some of the policies that we'll get into after. So with that said, with referrals in HMIS, we are looking at some of the things that are inside of HMIS that we look at. When a shelter or street outreach provider puts a person into the system, they are able to add different areas. Some of those areas that are important for us is that when I am pulling from coordinated entry, when I'm getting asked for a referral, that is still a manually done process. I am given a list that is prioritized, but I still have to look at that priority list and figure out, does this person meet criteria? Do they fit the eligibility of the program? Some of those eligibilities require disability of the adult family, disability of any member of the household. Some require minimal income, family size due to the size of the available unit, permanent residence, where they came from, depending on where the funding is. And also there's even, of course, chronicity requirements. So I'm going to look in HMIS first to see if they're meeting those criteria. And where those are in HMIS is when you look at the summary page, when you're doing that entry, there's going to be disabling condition, as well as proof of income and income sources. And again, the reason why this is relevant is because if I'm looking at data that's 4 or 5 years old, and I know that things like this change often, right? Income is going to be changing fairly regularly with majority of our population. I need to know that that information is up to date and relevant. Also, when disability questions are completely not answered, it really does hinder my referral process. Things that are also important to keep in mind are the project start dates. When you are enrolling somebody in coordinated entry, please ensure you are including the entire household. If you are doing an individual VI SPID for an adult only member, please make sure you are including only that adult. You're doing a complex family. There's multiple households. There's even people who have exited our households that may still pull into that coordinated entry. So when you start that coordinated entry, make sure you're selecting the appropriate members of the household, because I will refer all of those members of that identified household. And I think Ganea wanted to add some other items to the household situation.
Yes, households are a very well-known area of struggle in HMIS, which is why I've created a guide which you can find on our help desk. So please, you can always forward that link to any of your staff members. But the guide goes over how to create households, how to modify them. And if there's anything that looks off about a household, I know mistakes can happen, and that's fine. You can always reach out to us through the help desk, and we are more than happy to help fix the issue in HMIS, as well as to walk the end user through the process so that they can improve for future reference. And that's all I wanted to add on there, so I'll get that back to you, Dominique.
Yeah. Thank you. So, and it's so important that you guys are everyone is updating the household at the first initial intake, because that household is going to continue, if it's wrong, will continue to cause problems through the entire system. So if you are an emergency shelter and you check in and you forget a member of the household, then that coordinated entry also forgets that member of the household. Then the rapid rehousing provider doesn't get referred. Then the rapid rehousing provider doesn't open that member of the household. And so there's multiple barriers through the entire flow that are going to interrupt this household dynamic. And coming back to, again, with me making a referral, is I'm having to look at things like income, and if there's too much income, what the family size is, if they would fit into a size unit. So I need to ensure that you guys are building the correct families in HMIS, so that I know that data is good when I'm looking at it to refer. Also, follow up for that is where was their most recent residence? Where was your last permanent residence? Putting in a city there. Those are newer questions. I believe they came out about 3 years ago. Still seeing those unanswered. And of course, those may not have changed, but please review those at intake. And the housing status. Housing status is consistently an issue. There's a lot of contradicting decisions. Sometimes there are drop downs that are picked in those. But if they are entering your shelter, if you're encountering them through street outreach, their housing status should be category 1, literally homeless, and then you're deciding where they were previously, and then the client's report on how many times and for how long. So please keep that in mind. Next, I want to talk a little bit about more of the continuity of care. Like, okay, this helps me, but this next part is really intended to help you. And some of that information is going to be your client contacts, making sure you're updating emergency contacts, client locations, and case manager assignments. This is not something that's ever going to pull into a report. It's not required by HUD, but it is a matter of helping with increasing or lowering our barriers, I should say, across our community. So some of those places that are relevant are located at the bottom of your client profile page. You'll notice there is a client information, or excuse me, a client summary page. There's a client information section where you can add multiple phone numbers, multiple contacts. Also, please be mindful of, is this a text-only phone number? Is this a Wi-Fi only number and they're only going to have access to it at certain times of the day. If they're being placed in a hotel, whether through CHA, Directions for Living, Street Outreach, or some other program, put in the hotel, put in the room number. That's going to help with the referral and the connection piece that's necessary to make sure these people are getting enrolled and connected to services. Also, emergency contacts. You can always put end dates if the contacts are no longer relevant, but an emergency contact doesn't just have to be a mom or a sister. It could be a job line, if a different sort of contact. You could also put that under client information. But just to be as liberal with those as can be, again, for the purpose of services. Also, I would really encourage everyone to use the case manager tab if you have not already done that. I just showed it to some people this morning and they had no idea it was an option. The case manager tab is available where you can assign yourself or assign somebody on your staff as the case manager working with that client. So if someone does the intake, but someone else is going to be working with them, you can assign them as a case manager and help with that service overlap. So if you are Hope Villages of America, I know you guys are on here today, if you're putting in that client contact information, when they're referred to St. Vincent de Paul Rapid Rehousing, they can go in, see that the case manager is Timothy Calhoun, and see the contact number, maybe even see the Grace House room number to know how to get a hold of them in the most efficient way possible. Thank you. So with all that information, we're going to kind of get into another kind of trick that I want to show you was the coordinated entry referrals in HMIS. If you are a rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing provider, you are familiar with requesting referrals from me via email, and I respond with an email receipt. Those referrals are also tracked in HMIS. So if you are a shelter provider or other community provider, you can actually look in HMIS and see where those referrals are. If you click on service transactions, and actually you can go to the next slide, I think it has a visual. If you click on service transactions, there'll be some buttons on the bottom. You'll click view entire and then click the referrals tab. You will see when that referral was sent, to whom, and the needs status, the update of that referral, if it's been accepted or denied, and know if that person has a referral and who that referral may be. I get emails about that a lot. So again, let's talk about Hope Villages. You're here. So Timothy's looking up, has my client been referred yet? You can look under the referrals tab and see that this person was referred last week or yesterday in this example and is still pending enrollment. Thanks. So next we're going to transition into new policies, and I do apologize because I think this is the fourth time I've talked about this week, but I know that more than half of you have not heard it. So for those of you who have, thank you again for your patience. We're just trying to make sure that it is being received by all parties. On March 11th, this information was sent out to CEOs of all rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing programs, but it is relevant to all providers, again, to really get that continuity of care and services. These two new policies are going into effect Monday, March 22nd. The summary of those two policies are that one is the coordinated entry temporary rapid rehousing prioritization plan. This directly impacts rapid rehousing providers in expanding the prioritization scores for rapid rehousing from individuals originally 4 to 7 will now be 4 to 9, and households with minor aged children 4 to 8 is now going to be 4 to 10. So good news if you're a shelter provider, we will continue to review these as we get them, but this was a direct response to the increase of services and grants, excuse me, and funding that we received in our community. We will continue to monitor this, and we have had some Q&As, and we'll continue to have those opportunities. The next is housing provider interim contact protocols. I will go specifically into that. Here is a little bit more detail of the changes with the prioritization scores, but it really is self-explanatory of the 4 to 10 now for families and 4 to 7 for individuals. This next slide is the interim contact protocol. Thank you. This one will take us a few slides, but what we're doing in this one is we're really trying to establish COC-wide our contact protocols for enrollment, for referral and enrollment into rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing. So again, if you are a shelter provider, this is relevant because you can then go in HMIS, notice that your person has been referred, and know that, wait a minute, it's been too long. Why haven't they been contacted? These are the protocols that have now been established for the rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing. Initial contact must be made within 48 hours of receiving that initial referral. So if I'm sending a referral on Wednesday, initial primary contact should be started by Friday. If they then have 10 subsequent days, 2 weeks, to make their 3 contact attempts, and those 3 attempts must be made by various means and modes, times, as many different opportunities as you can. And that's, again, going back to one of the tab that we showed you, the screen that we showed you, where it's so important that we're getting good contact information, good case manager information, because I'm sending referrals where they've checked out of shelter and there's no contact information. When I see that, I wonder, why did we even do the VI SPDAT to begin with, right? Street homeless individuals that we don't know what corner they're on, they haven't accessed the system before, and they don't necessarily access again. Next slide. So, and I apologize, I'll say this, it might have been on the last slide. If they are enrolled in a shelter, there must be contact made to that shelter provider. So again, shelter providers, just be aware that if you have initiated that referral, or if they are enrolled in your shelter, someone should be reaching out to you from that housing provider to connect to that client. After 11 business days, the referral may be marked as declined and returned to the list. And then after 15 days, the client, I have to make sure the client has been marked as closed. However, if the client does respond or follows back up after that initial 10 days, you have the opportunity, if you choose, to open that person and enroll them. Reach out to me. My email is included here. I'll also put it in the chat. And you can say, we have decided to enroll the client that I returned last week, 4579, whatever. So you do have the opportunity to do that. It gives the clients a couple extra days if they're checking voicemails, emails, whatever it may be. However, if you don't have capacity, they'll just be re-referred. Also, if a household is referred 2 times and returned due to no contact, they will be closed from coordinated entry. This is a big change. We've kind of let them in the past roll off of the active list, which takes 90 days of inactivity. So in the past, we would have to wait 90 days, 3 months or more to say that this person is no longer active in the system and we are closing them from coordinated entry. This allows people, looks like about a turnaround of about 30 days or less, to say this person is not in shelter, I cannot get a hold of this person, and they're being returned to the list. After the second time, they're being closed from coordinated entry. If they pop back into shelter, they show back up through street outreach, they will require a new VI SPDAT, which would be a new coordinated entry. The old one would be closed out. So that's how you would notice that there would be a new one needed. And of course, there are extensions and provisions to that. Some agencies have their own policies and procedures that have to be addended. We are also still working through some of these, so you can always request an extension on time or enrollment for your program or project. Okay, last part. This is the last part for me. This also, you guys have heard from me a lot over the past week. I want to just give us a brief summary of what this is on one area, but we have a new opportunity called the Voucher Identification Program for Housing Stability from RRH. We're calling it the VIP program for short. This is a combination of 150 vouchers from Pinellas County Housing Authority and City of St. Pete Housing Authority. And these vouchers are good anywhere within Pinellas County with the exception of City of Clearwater. The referrals can only be made by a rapid rehousing specialist. Okay, so if you are not a rapid rehousing program, if you are the shelter or a service provider, please be mindful that this is only for rapid rehousing enrolled and housed households. The criteria, and the main reason for that is there had to be, this is set out, this is decided upon by the housing authorities, but there must be case management involved. So that rapid rehousing program still provides case management while they are in the Pinellas County housing voucher. So one really great opportunity for this is that people can actually transition in place. If they are already moved into a unit and they qualify, that unit can be transitioned to a housing voucher unit, and again, set up for more stable housing. The criteria is that there must be a non-elderly person with a disability, meaning 18 to 61. So before their 62nd birthday, the referral must be made. They must have a disability, and again, be enrolled in rapid rehousing. Their other item for qualification is that they must have a PSH, they must have initially scored within PSH range, but are receiving rapid rehousing, or scored a full SPDAT of 45 or higher. HUD has same requirements for background and barriers for housing, including evictions from housing authorities, sex offender status. Ooh, tree limb just fell on my roof. Sorry about that. And hold on, my train of thought. And members of the household must not be registered. Oh, drug-related charges. Sorry about that. And there must be 80% AMI for the entire household. Any other questions? I know that was a lot of information I just threw at everybody, so I don't know if we're doing questions at the end, or I did not plan for questions, so I don't know how you guys want to do those. HMIS, I defer to you.
So Dominique, we had no questions in the chat so far, so we can just wait if you don't mind, unless you need to go, but that is a lot for folks to take in. So maybe we should open the floor at this time for any questions, because it was a lot and I don't want anyone's question to go unanswered. So if anyone has a question, feel free to ask it now of Dominique. Otherwise, we can hold off until the end as well.
If you have a question, please, you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or if you want to just raise your hand and I can unmute you, whichever you prefer. But I imagine folks are still processing everything that they just heard.
And like I said, some people have heard this for about the third or fourth time now. So, but it is some really good information. We want to make sure everyone is getting a hold of it. And I know it doesn't make it to all people. So I hope that you can take this information, view the slides later, copy and paste them onto your team meeting and to peers and to staff to understand just some of the awesome changes. I think they're great, but you might not. So I'm available for questions. I also put my email in the chat, and my cell phone is in there as well.
Thanks, Dominique.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Our next section for our agenda items is HUD reports, and this one will be for Brian.
Do you want to go ahead and go on to the next slide?
Yep.
So I just want to provide some short and quick updates about some of the reporting that's coming up. So the first one is for the ESG CV funding. We are about 2 weeks away from the end of the second quarter of the fiscal year 2021 for HUD. So that means that we are getting to the point where we're going to start doing reporting for ESG CV funding. The reason I bring this one up is that, I mean, obviously any quarterly reporting is going to be coming due, but with ESG CV, this is the one where reporting is done by the HMIS lead agency across the country. So we're doing it for ESGCV funding in Pinellas, regardless of who the recipient is. If you're in Hillsborough, the Hillsborough HMIS would be doing the same. So it's a different process than the regular ESG. So any quarterly reporting is going to be coming due. But specifically for ESGCV, the quarterly reporting and cumulative reporting for the fiscal year will start April 1st. The window for HUD runs from April 1st to April 30th, but the due date for data is set by the recipient and not by HMIS or HUD. So I don't really know dates to tell you because we haven't been given that information yet. I do know for DCF, so if you get ESGCV funding, which passes through the HLA from DCF, then your due date is going to be April 12th, 2021. That is the date that we have to get the data submitted to DCF for the grant. So you have basically the first 11 days of April to make sure that data is in there and updated and correct. Again, these are run by us. We get a 4-day window from when the recipient tells us that they need their data. So once they tell us that they need their data, they set the due date. We have a 4-day window, which is set by HUD. So the recipient can't ignore it. It has to give us 4 days. SAGE will not let us do an upload until those 4 days have elapsed. So we will have a little bit of lead time. So when we get that information, we will pass it on. But until we get that information, we really don't know what that's going to be. Most of them seem to be going for the middle or end of the month, but they need time to make sure they have all of their things lined up as well. So make sure if you have ESGCV funding between now and really the first week of April, try to make sure that any data that you haven't put in yet is in there. And then anything that's coming up through the rest of the month, make sure you try to get that in as timely as possible. We'll try to let you know as much as we can when we have more information on those due dates. But like I said, it could be a very small window for us to work. So your best bet is if you have ESGCV funding from any recipient, to make sure that you are staying on top of that data, running the CAPER report yourself to make sure everything looks like it should for you, doing any reconciliation you can. And then, like I said, once we get that information, we can pass it on and let you know. But at this point, we're kind of in the dark too, because on April 1st, someone could decide that they want to start their submission April 1st. That means by the 5th, we could be able to upload. Hopefully nobody would do that, but again, we don't fully know. So I just want to stress as much as I can to try and make sure you're staying on top of the ESGCV funding. If you have any questions or issues with that, obviously contact the help desk, and we can help you either run a CAPER report to see what that data looks like, or help resolve any data quality issues that you're seeing in that report. Because like I said, once that opens up, we can let you know, but we'll still have a very small window to make any major corrections. So as best you can, try to stay on top of that data moving through the 1st of April. You can go on to the next slide. All right, so HIC and PIT are coming up as well. So we are kind of in that regular HUD reporting calendar for housing shelter providers. I believe most of you have done this before, so this won't be anything new. There really aren't any major changes this year as far as how the data is being reported. So the one major change that Avery had mentioned before is that we did not do the unsheltered street count due to the pandemic and safety concerns. So the PIT date for us is the night of January 22nd, 2021. So that is when we will be looking at data for shelter utilization and bed utilization for the PIT and the HIC. The reports, we're still kind of waiting to see if there's going to be an extension on this. We are not able to start our submission. Usually HUD gives us 2 to 3 months for this. Nothing has opened up yet. We have not received the guidance, but right now HUD is still saying that April 30th will be the deadline. That might change, but we are going to move forward as if that is the deadline because we want to make sure we have everything put together. So you will be getting the same information you've seen in years past for your bed counts and your utilization rate, how many people were in your shelter housing project on the night of the PIT date. So you will get that same information. We need you to make sure that you do go through and confirm it. As a reminder, any changes that need to be made to client counts, maybe there aren't enough clients showing up at HMIS as you thought you had that night, anything like that needs to be updated in HMIS for us to submit. We've been able to in the past kind of update it as we go and maybe get to it after the report is submitted. At this point, we really have to have the data in there before we actually do the submission. So we will have to get the final counts from HMIS to make sure that everything lines up. So you'll get the counts. If the count is off, we can provide the client IDs for that, and we can help you resolve any issues and any count issues that we're finding. For bed counts, Pinellas HMIS staff will do the updates for your bed inventories. The data again needs to be in Pinellas HMIS before then. So if you have any changes, and I'll get into that in a little bit, then we want to make sure that Pinellas HMIS matches up with how many beds you have available for essentially for the night of the PIT count again for the HIC. Go to the next slide. So again, as Avery had mentioned, PIT changes. So we were given an exception for the unsheltered street survey. So we are going to be pulling data for the unsheltered count from HMIS from street outreach, coordinated entry, clients that are not connected to a shelter or housing project. So those that would be, as best we can tell, our street homeless. Street homeless is a difficult thing for HMIS to track because if they're not connected to a project, we don't always know what their situation is. But to get that exception, we had to compare what that data looked like compared to last year's street survey. So there's a fair amount of very close counts for the two. So it was acceptable for HUD for a rough estimate. And that's really what it's going to be. We're going to be submitting aggregate counts. It's going to be an estimate of our unsheltered homeless. The sheltered count process will be the exact same. So if you have an emergency shelter, you'll get data that says on the night of the PIT count, you had 30 people staying in your shelter. And all we need you to do is just make sure that the counts that are showing up that night are correct. The one thing I will stress is that clients can only show up in one project for the PIT count. So if you have clients that maybe are showing up in your project and another project, that may cause some of the differences, and we'll have to get that resolved. But generally, all we need you to do for the PIT is to confirm what your counts were for that night. Move on to the next slide. So HIC changes. This is where I think we're going to have the most work this year. So the biggest difference with the HIC is that obviously due to the pandemic, some of your shelters may have changed how they're operating. This isn't really any different than how you would report bed changes at other times. It's just, I think the changes due to the pandemic are impacting more providers than are probably used to doing this. And so basically what we'll need to do is make sure that the number of beds that you report having for the HIC represent how many beds are the maximum number of beds that you have that are available. So if you have a program that has closed to new residents during the pandemic, let's say you had 30 beds, but because of social distancing or whatever, you aren't taking new clients, and so your count now is down to 5. You're not taking anyone new. You have 5 people in shelter, in-house. So your bed availability would be 5 for that night. So this is going to be a temporary adjustment, but it is an adjustment we have to report on the HIC. So if you have a project that is closed and is not taking anyone right now, then obviously you would have 0 beds for the night of the HIC. If you are still taking new residents, but you have cut capacity in half for maybe if you have shared beds where you have 4 beds in a unit and you have 40 units, maybe you are cutting it down to 2 beds per unit, whatever that might be. We just have to make sure that what is being reported on the HIC reflects what is available, not how many beds you would normally have in a normal year. So if your process in response to the pandemic has changed how you're counting your beds and how many beds you have available, that's the information that we need to know. So that's where I think for some projects where maybe your bed list hasn't changed for 5 or 6 years, there may be some differences now. If you have any questions on this, we can work through it and make sure we have the accurate counts. But like I said, this section may take a little longer than normal just because if you have made changes, and if you've made changes and it's easier for you to just describe what those changes are and we can help you get to that count, we can. So if you say, well, we took all of our units and we did this with them, let us know that. Whatever you can tell us, we can help work through this to make sure we get accurate counts or as close to accurate as possible. And go on to the next slide. I think that's it.
Yep. Next, we are going to go through some of the software updates, beginning with the new Shelter Point module. So I'll leave that to you,
Okay.
Brian.
So I know we've mentioned this in the past, but we wanted to make sure it was on everyone's radar because we have a deadline for this transition set by WellSky. So, and I believe the deadline is September 1st of this year. So we have about 6 months to roll out the new Shelter Point module. It's called Unit Manager. So of course, not only is the module changing, but so is the name. So we'll have to get used to that change as well. But what this means is that we are going to be, and I say we, Pinellas HMIS staff are going to be looking at the new module, working through a demo site to figure out what this is going to look like. Generally, as far as like bed lists go, that's going to remain the same for you. It's really how your end users and staff interact with the bed list. And generally what I would say is that it's a little more user-friendly. The one great example I can give is that when we're talking about bed availability. So with the new Unit Manager, one option is that you can mark beds as offline for a number of reasons. You can hold the bed because let's say you have a family in the unit and there's an extra bed listed on the bed list, but it's not available because it's with that family. You can mark it offline. If you have beds that go under construction, you can mark them as under construction. You can mark them as closed. So it lets you manage that in a way that gives us a little more information as well. So when we look at your bed list, we don't just see beds are on hold. We know exactly what the reason is, or at least a better idea of what the reason is for that hold. But basically what we're going to have to do is once we figure out the rollout plan and get everything set up on our end, we're going to have to obviously establish a transition plan for this. And then all staff, all end users, every agency admin that interacts or manages or works with Shelter Point now and is going to need that access in the future will have to go through a training for a unit manager. Again, this is more about the interface changing than it is about the assessments or how you're going to be tracking clients in your bed list. Functionally, it's going to be very similar. So it's really just helping you navigate the new interface, but it will have to be training provided for anyone that accesses Unit Manager. So keep that in mind as we get more information and get this plan. Obviously, we'll be communicating with you. Because we're going to be finishing up Hick and Pitt in April, it kind of gives us a break between our next major HUD reports and gives us some time. So we're going to start looking at the best time to do that. And obviously we can also get feedback from you. We want to make sure this works with our shelters. Obviously we have a deadline, so we can't be fully flexible, but we want to make sure that when we look to roll this over, that we're not going to be doing it at a time that's inconvenient for a lot of our providers. So expect to hear more information from us on this. Right now, like I said, we don't have a lot of information on what the transition is going to look like, except it will require training for all of our end users that use Shelter Point. All right, so my next update for software is Click. So because the theme is apparently things that are going away this summer, Click is also on that list. So Click is going to be our new reporting tool really come August. So in August, the functionality in Internet Explorer that allows us to make custom art reports is going to go away. So that is on Microsoft, that is not on WellSky or on SAP. So it's completely out of our hands. So as of August, that functionality will end, which means no more custom art reports. Art will still function, but you will not be able to do any kind of custom work with it. If there's an error in the report, we won't be able to fix it. So it really puts us at a disadvantage as far as that goes. So over the next few months, I'm working on transitioning all of our existing reports over to Click. As mentioned earlier, Click is not yet available for all of our end users, and it's still getting some final updates to make it available for all of our end users. As a reminder, I know I heard from some of you before, it's on my list now. If you have a custom art report that was built for you by myself, or even if it's an older report that maybe was built with TBIN, if it's something that you're using, let us know. We want to make sure that we have that on our radar so we can make sure either there's a new report that's going to replace it that will make your life easier, or we want to make sure that you have it available going forward. So we want to make sure we're accounting for all of that. We don't lose anything in this transition. And I'd also say too, because we talked about the report training, we can still do art report training as far as like custom reports go. I wouldn't recommend it at this point. Art is, like I said, it requires Internet Explorer only. It's a little finicky. It's full of errors right now, and it can take a while to learn. So what I would recommend is, if you are interested in custom reporting, I would strongly recommend, or if you're staff that are, you wait until Click is available, and then we can go through that process then. And we're happy to do it now. It's just with art going away in about 5 months, it's a lot of investment for you to learn a tool that's going to disappear. And then the one thing I will say is I just had a comment sent to me about how do you know if something is a custom report? If it's a report that you're using, so a lot of you have an agency folder in art. If you have a report in there, or if they're just reports that you're using on a regular basis, you can also let us know that, send us a help desk ticket with those reports. Because the one thing I'll say too is that Click is going to be different than art as far as how reports are run and what they look like. And so if you're using a report, so I use the completeness reports as an example. We're used to calling it, the 0640 report, or the, you have the 252 completeness for entries, or the 243 completeness for services. You're used to like that 4-digit identifier for the reports. Click is not using the same naming convention. It's similar, but it's going to have a couple letters and then a series of numbers. So if there are reports that you're using, and this is going to probably cause some frustration at times, let us know that also. For all of the certification reports, we'll figure out what that looks like. But if there are things that you need for your own internal reconciliation or something that's even an existing art report created by WellSky, let us know, and we can help figure out once Click is available to you and art is getting transitioned away, this is the report that's going to provide you with that same information, because they are going to be different. And so I'm working on mapping reports over so we know that this WellSky published report in art is going to be this one in Click, but we're going to make sure that we account for everything. So if you have any questions, any reports you use regularly, just let us know that, and we can make sure that we have a process in place to help you make that transition as seamless as possible. We want to make sure that when Click really takes off, that we're not struggling to figure out what you need to fulfill those grants. And so the APR, the CAPER, the PATH report, those canned reports, those aren't changing. It's just the art reports that are going to be changing. So if there are things you use, again, just let us know as much lead time as possible, and we can make sure that there's something in place for you.
Perfect. Thank you, Brian. The next section of our software updates is Wufoo, which is an online form builder. It's used to collect, data, files, payments, and all HMIS forms will be moving to Wufoo starting in May. And one of the biggest changes with the software is that future license payments will be accepted through Wufoo, meaning there will no longer be a need to mail in any checks, especially right now. I know it's very frustrating to send checks with how long it takes to get in, but with Wufoo, the payment would be done almost instantaneously. The next software is Talent, and I know we've introduced this at the previous meeting, but some of the features that are coming in the courses that are being built right now are video footage of data entry. There will be step-by-step guides in the course, and any user or agency administrator can always go back and retake those courses. Whenever a course is completed, the certificate will automatically pop up with the user's name and an expiration date if applicable. And that certificate stays in Talent. You really don't need to download it unless you need it for any sort of reporting or anything like that. But the certificates will stay on Talent. So if you ever lose it, it's right there for you. And once a certificate is expired, for example, so take an example as the HMIS annual refreshers. The user will be automatically reassigned to that course. So it takes away the need for emailing back and forth to try and get people to scheduled for their annual refreshers. And Talent also allows the ability to have a live training session on there. So these will mostly be held by topic. So if we're going over HUD verifications or UDEs or case management tools in general, users can sign up through Talent and log in on that particular day. And lastly, the next new software, and I think some of you may have already used this because I've started using it with some agencies, is Calendly, and that's one of our automated scheduling softwares where folks can register their own user trainings, refreshers, report trainings, and such. You can schedule group and one-on-one trainings. It will automatically send a calendar invite upon sign up. And inside that calendar invite, there will be a link to access the webinar, whether that would be through Teams or WebEx. It will send you a confirmation once you sign up for a particular day, and it will send you reminders through emails and text messages if you do, in fact, put your phone number in there. And inside the calendar invite at the very bottom, there will be a section where you can actually cancel or reschedule the link, reschedule the training in case anything happens. Then there is a reschedule link in that meeting invite, and it will take you right back to the sign up page where you can just pick a different day and time, and it will pretty much just start the process all over again with a new calendar invite. And this is what the interface looks like. It will say what type of training that is on the top left. It will have the durations, and it will give you the days that are available. Whichever days are not, you won't be able to click on. And once you click on that, it will give you some available times that you can select. Once you click on that, you fill in your name and email. It will send you a calendar invite, and you're all set to go. And now we've reached the question and answers portion of this meeting, and I will go ahead and just stop sharing my screen here. If you have any questions, please feel free to either unmute yourself, or if you don't have a microphone, feel free to drop it in our chat box, and we'll be able to answer from there. I understand we've just dropped a lot of information on all of you, so you may still be processing all of the slides. If you have it open on a separate screen, I'm sure you're probably just looking at it thinking you're going to have to reread it a couple times for it to stick, and we understand that. But this is the perfect time to ask questions, or if something comes up later, you can always reach us through the help desk, or if it's one of the coordinated entry changes you have questions on. Dominique did put her cell phone and email in the chat, as well as in the PowerPoint that you all have access to on the help desk.
So everybody is so quiet today. It's Friday Eve, and apparently no one has any questions, so we must have really dazzled you all with all of this magnificent information. Keep in mind, though, it will be available on our help desk. The slides will be there, as well as the recorded session. So in case you want to review it again or go over something that you may not have understood, it will always be available to you. Keep in mind, we do have the help desk for HMIS. It is the best way to reach us. Like I've said in the past, we do go on vacation or have a day off or attend quite a few meetings, especially virtually right now because of the pandemic. So the best way to reach HMIS staff is through the help desk, because one of us is always minding the store and can answer the question promptly. We don't like to make anybody wait. If you notice anything unfamiliar in HMIS that looks kind of odd to you, please let us know, so that we can address it and make sure that the data is accurate as possible. I know that a lot of you have heard Dominique talk about the coordinated entry changes and things like that in the referral process. Hopefully these slides are detailed enough to where you can follow along, but also she gave her cell phone number and her email in case you have any further questions. Definitely reach out to her for that. We appreciate Avery, as usual, joining us to provide us with system performance issues. And this was not a bad time. The pandemic has affected our data quite a bit. We are still, like she said, wondering where everybody went. They are starting to trickle back into the system, though. And I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I'm thinking it's not, but I'm hoping that folks are staying safe out there. And when will the webinar recording be posted? So Larry, the webinar should be posted just as soon as we can get it downloaded from the web, and we will post it to the help desk.
Yes,
I had
and
a question that was actually sent to me, which I think is a great question, and I think everyone will be interested in the answer. So the question was, will Unit Manager allow for easier corrections for joining family members or deleting entry exits? So I don't have full information on that yet, but as Ganael mentioned, families, Dominique I think also mentioned, families are a big issue area in Service Point and how they're connected. WellSky is working on ways to make that easier. So what I had seen before is more about like who they've been associated with in the past, adding new associations to where it's not as rigid as it currently is, which should hopefully help with a lot of those issues. Again, we haven't seen what that actually looks like yet with this new transition. They've done a lot of updating to Unit Manager. So once we get that demo site and we can start looking at that, we'll have a better idea. But they are, I just wanted to state that they are actively working on ways to make that process easier for end users, because they understand that what was set up in Service Point was really set up years ago and it hasn't held up well. So they are acknowledging that and working on ways to make it a lot more user friendly. So hopefully that will help resolve a lot of those issues and make that process a lot easier. So that would be part of what we'd also cover in the training too. So once we get an idea of what that process looks like for Unit Manager and how that plays into managing those entry exits and the families, we'll have that information for you in the training.
Great, thanks, Brian. So lots of changes. This pandemic has caused everybody to rethink a lot of things. I hope everyone is staying safe and secure out there in this time. And we really appreciate your time today and want to thank you again for all that you do. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to all of us. But if no one has any other questions, we will conclude this webinar. Take care, everyone.
thank you. Take care.
Bye, thanks everyone.